He was the laugh we needed, and the sting we didn't see coming. John Clarke didn't just lampoon public life. He reset the way New Zealand and Australia saw themselves. But here's where it gets controversial. He did it by playing everyone as John Clarke. Across nearly 4 decades, the late satirist and comedian embodied countless figures. In New Zealand, he burst onto the scene as Fred Dagg, the laconic sheep farmer in gumboots with a philosopher's sly grin. In Australia, he teamed up with Bryan Dawe to inhabit a rolling cast of pompous politicians, dubious executives, and confident fools, all without changing his own voice. And this is the part most people miss. The secret was that the character never hid the man. His daughter, writer-director Lorin Clarke, puts it in her father's own charming shorthand. He used to tell her that while some actors would research how to become a Danish prince to play Hamlet, his Hamlet would be from Palmerston North. Translation: the truth lands harder when it comes from where you actually live. Lorin's new documentary, But Also John Clarke, brings together friends and collaborators to map that singular talent. Actor Sam Neill, a longtime mate and fellow New Zealander, calls him a polymath who could write, perform, and toss off poetry on demand, yet always with that unmistakable Clarke center of gravity. No matter the role, you could feel the same steady intelligence and wry decency steering the ship. Clarke died suddenly in 2017 at 68 after a heart attack while bushwalking in Victoria's Grampians, binoculars still warm from birdwatching, one of his great loves. Even those he roasted paid respect. Then Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, a frequent target, described Clarke's satire as a public good that strengthened democracy by speaking truth to power. Not everyone took it so graciously. Comedian Ben Elton remarks in the film that when Clarke skewered someone, they often didn't realize they'd been finished off until the next day. The late 1970s in New Zealand proved the point. After Fred Dagg became a cultural force and a persistent provocation, Clarke was almost chased out of the country. Tall poppies don't last long, especially there. The film's title nearly wore its original hat. Not only Fred Dagg, but also John Clarke. In the end, the team trimmed it to But Also John Clarke for international release, while the New Zealand screening goes by Not Only Fred Dagg. Lorin admits she winced at the change. She loved the playful nod to Peter Cook and Dudley Moore's Not Only But Also, but concedes short titles fare better in listings. A small compromise for a big story. Meanwhile, Fred Dagg's iconic outfit, bucket hat, cheerer singlet, shorts, and gumboots, now resides at Te Papa in Wellington. Like a national relic that still smells faintly of sheep paddocks and punchlines. Much of the documentary traces the forces that forged Dagg. Actor-director Oscar Kitely dubs Clarke the godfather of New Zealand comedy, with a bone-dry, deadpan cadence that echoes through Taika Waititi's films and the offbeat tunes of Flight of the Conchords. Rhys Darby, who played the Conchords' cheerfully inept manager, calls Dagg a kick in the head with a gumboot we all needed. At the time, New Zealand television still trained its presenters to speak with polished British enunciation. Dagg sledgehammered that pretension. His humor was familiar, local, and liberating. A farmer with 7 sons all named Trevor, both ridiculous and instantly recognizable as a Kiwi everyman. One headline dubbed him the thinking person's Paul Hogan, a backhanded compliment that sticks because it's true. In a small market, the phenomenon was overwhelming. Fred Dagg's greatest hits, knocked out in a few hours, became, by some accounts, the best-selling debut by a New Zealand artist until Lord's pure heroin. Yet success bred resentment. As Sam Neill notes, New Zealanders can lop tall poppies even faster than Australians. That tension pushed Clarke across the Tasman in 1977. In Australia, newly a father, he stepped back from performing to listen, learn, and write. Reinvention was the point. Dagg had become a cage. When he reappeared on the Gillies Report, he unveiled the absurdist sport of Farnarkeling, perhaps the purest showcase of his love for language. The deliberately nonsensical rules, involving arkling, flukums, gonads, and grommets read like a fever dream that sports-mad Melbourne took as gospel. Letters flooded the Age. Somewhere, Roy and H.G. were sharpening their pencils. Wendy Harmer, a Gillies alum, recalls that by the early 80s, Clarke had nailed the national rhythm. He and Bryan Dawe launched their mock interviews in 1987 on ABC Radio, crystallizing a format that treated audiences as intelligent co-conspirators rather than targets. You can see his fingerprints on Working Dog's projects. Just as Dagg reflected New Zealand back to itself, The Castle teased Australia's suburban ideals with affection. Utopia owes a clear debt to the Games, the mockumentary Clarke co-wrote with Ross Stevenson, which perfected the art of bureaucratic farce. Clarke's creative philosophy clashed at times with broadcasters' impatience. When the Games debuted, he argued for giving viewers time to learn the show's grammar, the subtle rules and rhythms that make the humor bloom. He trusted the audience more than the executives did, and in the end, audiences returned that trust. What kept people coming back was that even while inhabiting others, Clarke always seemed fully himself. Journalist Jana Wendt, who hosted Clarke and Dawe on A Current Affair from 1989 to 1996, says the secret was in his eyes, a mischievous glance to camera that quietly invited you in on the joke. Lorin adds that he was perpetually observant, even mid-performance, aware, protective, and attentive to the audience's intelligence. Her film aims to honor that bond. But also John Clarke screens across Victoria from 15th August as part of the Melbourne International Film Festival. It's a celebration, a homecoming, and yes, a gentle kick in the head we might still need. Now, the part that could split the room was Clarke's insistence on always being himself, the key to his genius, or a limitation that kept him from vanishing into characters like other great actors do. And when satire feels this humane, does it cut deep enough, or is its kindness precisely why it lands? Tell me where you stand. Did Clarke's approach sharpen your view of public life, or do you think a harsher blade is sometimes necessary?